Well, hello, everybody on the internet. We are back with Ed Video's Open Circuit. I'm Scott from Ed Video, and this is Edie, the co-host and co-producer of this show that we do from our super secret location here at Ed Video at 404 York Road, Guelph, Ontario, Canada. I hope everyone is doing well, and thanks so much for everyone who tunes into these shows and here's these stories from our guests, artists. Today we have an amazing guest. I can't wait to talk to about his music and his video projects. He's a friend of mine named Dustin Seabrook. He doesn't live too far from Guelph, and we're very excited to talk about all the things he's done, but in particular his latest project through his Still Creates name called Project Isolation. And later in the show we're actually going to have a kind of a soft premiere of the latest episode, episode 3. It's hot off the hard drive. So that's very exciting. But before we talk to Dustin, Edie and I just really wanted to speak about something else that came up. Last night at dinner, I was talking with my wife and Edie's mom, Jen, about this amazing project that our good friends Jesse Jordan and Eric Garcia Gomez have started, where they live in Oaxaca, Mexico. Let's take a look. This project that they've started is called Friendly Food Donations. And what they've decided to do is something just amazing. Is they're collecting money from anyone who will donate to their cause, and then they go to organic farms and they buy as much fresh produce, vegetables, beans, eggs, all sorts of things that they can get directly from these incredible farms in Oaxaca. And then what they do is they divide that up, and then they distribute it to people who are really suffering in Oaxaca with food security issues. As you know, maybe some of our viewers in Canada may not know, but a lot of people in Mexico are like day wage laborers, and because of the COVID pandemic, are having difficulties getting out each day to make money, and that's how they need that money each day to feed their families. So this is an amazing initiative by two great artists, Jesse and Eric, to do what they can to help out. And so far, even though there's not massive donations coming in, they can do a lot with that money to feed a lot of people. So if you want to check it out, it's called Friendly Food Donations, and there's their Instagram and a very easy way to PayPal them some money to really help out. And the reason we're mentioning this is because last night, as Jen and I were speaking about it, Edie was listening in, and she offered to do something super amazing. Do you want to say what you just decided on your own to do, Edie?
I donated $50.
Edie donated $50 of her own money, or we will do this afternoon, and I'm going to donate a little bit too, and Jen already gave a little bit of money to this project. So we're really proud of Edie that this money she's been saving for a long time, from birthdays and Christmas and things like that, she's willing to donate it, and $50 that'll go a really far way to help a lot of people in Oaxaca, Mexico. So yeah, consider it, check it out, and maybe help out if you have the ability to do it, because we know that Jesse and Eric are working hard to make sure this works, and it's going to have some great results for people. So now, as we do on each show, today we're going to do, before we get going with the main part of the show, Edie's video game review. And so let's take a look. Edie, what do you have for us today? What's this game?
It's called Echo. You can get it on the App Store. It's $3, $2. And then so there's different levels of the game, and I'm going to start at number 1. So each one has a title, so this one's blind. It's like echolocation a bit, and so to move you press really for a while or you want to stand. And if you want to like kind of see around, you just press there. It's really interesting. And then you try and find the exits. So this one's exits here.
Does this game work better with the sound?
Yes.
Let's turn the sound up. Maybe
think.
our microphone can pick it up. Or maybe actually I think it's set to go into the mixer, which I can't control, unfortunately.
I don't hear anything.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I would have had to set that up, but you can kind of get the idea of it. So you're kind of using your ears and your eyes to solve the puzzle?
Yeah. And it can be really hard. I was doing this level in the car, and it got really hard, but I'm trying to remember how I got it. Oh.
Wow. So also I think this is a good game to play with headphones on.
Yeah.
Because it depends on the stereo sound and to guide your way. And it's also a little bit spooky, isn't it?
Yeah. This level number 3, there's like, it's called Death.
Whoa.
And there's this red that can chase you. Well, on number 4 it can chase you, but if you go into it, it hurts you.
Wow.
And then so you just try your best to avoid it. And which can be hard.
It looks like a really great game. We're kind of breaking our rule a little bit because normally we have free games, but this one's only $2 or $3, I think, and it's a really beautifully created game.
Nice.
So, what would you rate this game out of 5?
5.
It's a full 5. That's your first perfect score for a game. That's amazing. And sorry, one more time. What is this game called?
It's called Dark Echo.
Dark Echo, and you can find it on the App
Or is
Store.
it Black Echo? I forget.
For just a few dollars. Wow, that's fantastic. Well, thank you very much for your video game review of the day, Edie. Really appreciate it. Today we actually only have one slide to show you of our upcoming guest, who's tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to be here. It's going to be a great opportunity for us to speak to Corey Steckel, who's a Guelph-based artist. Does a lot of different things, but really wanted to talk to him about his collage work. We were supposed to actually have an exhibition with Corey in Athens, Greece next month, but obviously that's been postponed till next year. But we're going to talk a little bit about how that's going online, like so many other things. All right, so now I think it is time to find on our video phone our guest today. Dustin Seabrook is a person I've known for maybe about 10 years almost. He's well known in this area and beyond as a musician. He's also a video maker. He's a collaborator, a producer. He does a lot of things. And we're going to talk about, particular about his music and his video work, and also his latest project, which is called Project Isolation. So let's see if we can find Dustin here on the video phone. Let's see. There he is, I think. Can you see me and hear me, Dustin?
I can hear and see. Hi, Scott. Hi, Edie.
Hi.
How's it going there? Tell us before we get going, tell us where you are and what you're up to.
I'm in my home in Woodstock, Ontario, and I'm doing what most of us are doing these days and spending a lot of time indoors. And I'm getting outside. I hope many other are too, safely. But yeah, I'm spending a lot of time in front of these two screens behind me.
That's a common story these days, but a good thing to be doing. Before we get going about the details of your projects, what I'd love to do is talk to guests about their really early recollections of art or music or anything like creative that sort of maybe got you, maybe nudged you into pursuing it as a creator.
My own memories are probably go back to grade 1, grade 2, and at that time I was more into drawing, painting, always doodling. Loved it back then. There are home videos of me at 2 years old with a guitar strumming and singing, so maybe music was in me before I really knew it or remember it. And then I was into some school plays and theater in grade 5, I guess around 10 years old, whatever that would be. And that was probably all that I did in that area until I was about, I think, grade 8, so 13 or 14. I started playing guitar then. A friend of mine, Matt, who's a musician from Guelph, Matt Manugian, and I started playing a lot of acoustic guitar together and teaching each other.
Well, I want to talk a little bit more about your music things. This is a big part of what you've done in your life. I kind of got to know you, I suppose. I think it was about in 2013 or 14. You, with some other people, but I think you were sort of the spearhead of it. Put in a grant for the very first ever Look Here micro grant, which is a thing that a Video and Kazoo Fest does together to sort of foster a new audio visual performance. We didn't really know what we were doing or expecting, and the jury decided yours was the application to go for the very first one, and you did this incredible project. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that as we sort of watch the trailer that you made?
Absolutely. The trailer, actually, I should say before we go into it, I think that was made by the co-creator of the project, who's a friend of mine, Daniel Ross. He's also from Woodstock. And I think we were working with Thomas Hamilton at the time as well. But yeah, I was not doing much creatively at that point. I was at the Deli Street Bistro in Guelph when it was open working, and I was tipped off on this grant and thought it would be a great opportunity to blend some of the music I've been working on for years but didn't really have an outlet for, and some of my friends' video footage together, and we applied for the grant. And the whole concept behind it, or Foster, was actually loosely based on a character from our hometown, a man here who, him loosely, but also just about like small town poverty and some of the mental health stuff that goes on. I do have to be a little bit careful with that conversation because we've since lost the man that it was inspired by. He's not around anymore. But yes, that's loosely what we were doing with it. We wanted to do a live band with visuals behind it that kind of depict small town decay, small town poverty, as I said, and combine all those features to make something more beautiful, of it.
Well, it was a beautiful project. Brad from Kazoo and I, when we saw, we were blown away with what you came up with. And it's funny because the ethos of it was to really do something amazing that combines audio and visuals in a new way. And that's something that prepping for this and always seeing fragments of your work online through the years, you're a real master of understanding how to do that. We're going to take a look at some other examples of that. But let's talk while we do about some of your experiences with playing in bands as a musician with local musicians. You're kind of part of this crew that I don't know them very well, but I've always been in awe of how much they how active they are and how talented your group of friends are. You want to talk just a bit about some of your projects with different bands, Odd Years, Minotaurs, etc. And while we do, we'll watch a little bit of your latest video project you made for the Minotaurs.
Absolutely. Well, Odd Years is probably the oldest group that I've been with. A lot of those guys have played with all the way back to high school years. And some are no longer in the band, but were part of the high school days as well, that are local to Guelph, such as Thomas Hamilton. And then you have Matt Manugian, who's a great singer-songwriter himself, great musician. AJ Johnson, been playing with him since we were kids. Actually, his dad was responsible for a lot of our music education, in the sense of giving us an outlet at a local pub in Woodstock to practice performing. So through those years of being young, 13, 14 years old, getting an opportunity to play on a stage from such a young age and in a studio setting at AJ's dad's house really gave us an opportunity to learn how to perform as a band, to be cohesive with other musicians, to listen. So those years were really invaluable to where we all got musically. And working with somebody like Thomas, there was always a music education there because of his technical background, his classical skills and whatnot. So I'm incredibly fortunate for having those guys in my life, musically and as friends, to sort of build, what I can do musically now is heavily influenced by those circles. And Minotaurs is a lot of incredible musicians from the Toronto and Guelph area. I met Nathan through AJ and through Odd Years. I was a fan of the genre Afrobeat, which Minotaurs takes some influence from, amongst others. And we used to rehearse some Odd Years when Nathan played drums for us for a little bit there. And I used to always play a little bit of quintessential Afrobeat lines or whatever to try and stick it into him, that if he, I didn't want to take anybody's place, but if he needed a guitar player, I'd be happy to jump in. So that's another project I'm so grateful to be a part of. Rhythm section teaches me all the time about stepping back and just listening and being part of a group, and being able to listen to those horn players on stage is one of my favorite things to do.
Let's talk a little bit about, this name you've been using for a few years and what it means to you, Still Creates. Before we get into talking about the main part of our interview, which is your Project Isolation videos, tell us how you came up with this, or how you think about what Still Creates is or means to you.
Yeah, I still every once in a while have... I've gotten behind the name, but every once in a while I'm like, oh, what have I done here? I think with almost anything that you do that's solely your own, maybe. That name came from back in 2016 is when I left Guelph to Woodstock. And at that time I was going through some hard times with my mental health. And I started creating music again. And not only just creating music, but finishing music, which was never something I was really able to do for whatever reason, probably to do with perfectionism and things of that nature. But I did finish a song, and it was called Still initially. And my good friend and a big influencer of mine, Dan Ross, who I brought up earlier, will probably come up a few times, he encouraged the name Still. He's like, because I was just talking about the idea of stillness. All I wanted in my life was everything to just stop, almost like what it is right now. I wished for this in a way, because everything just seemed like it was moving so quickly and I had no control, and didn't know where to go next, and it was misguided in where to go. So yeah, that was sort of the beginning of that. And we released a video and a song called Don't Move. That was his family's footage, and his grandfather says, don't move in it. So that's where the track title came from. But Creates, that portion of it becomes, because I do web design and things of that nature, and I realized, Still is just a moniker for my music. And that was sort of limiting, because that's, known just for that, for music, for those that do know it. Whereas when I started getting into film and editing for people and doing promo films and things of that nature, I wanted something that was more of like a production company. So I just, it's my name and Creates.
So it's really evolved, I suppose, into really encompassing both video and audio together as what Still Creates is. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, which is maybe we'll learn more about that afterwards, but that's a big part of that's my favorite thing to do these days, is that relationship of music and video, and something I always want to do. And the Look Here grant, fostered that opportunity for me.
Well, I do have a few questions for near the end of the interview about how you think about that, because I'm really fascinated by it. How you approach making video. But first, let's talk about your latest project. It's been getting some really good attention in this area, involving a lot of people. It's called Project Isolation. We're going to take a look at maybe the first 2 or 3 minutes of the first episode and episode 2, and later we'll kind of take a look at the very latest one for the first time. It'll be shown here, episode 3. But before we take a look at some of episode 1, maybe just set it up. Like, tell us like the background of where you got this idea, what it's about, and what you're doing with it.
Well, when we found out that we were all going to be going into some form of isolation or lockdown, I mean, that terminology is not great, but we're going to not, losing gigs. Entertainment was being shut down everywhere. Anything that I was going to do as far as being a videographer or editing was being canceled by the day. Anything that was booked for the summer. And in doing so, or when that started to happen, I started to think about all of these people out there that may have never really experienced any sort of isolation or isolating thoughts, whether self-induced or not, and the mental health implications that come with that. So I wanted to do something. At first, I wanted to do something collaborative with artists, but then I felt that was really, really limiting because a lot of artists have means of being creative. In these periods of time, they have equipment to do so. They can produce things on their own, and the project itself does incorporate other artists and other musicians. But I really wanted to reach out and make anybody a videographer or an editor or a storyteller, and take this opportunity to get other people's insights on how they're feeling and what's going on. And I thought maybe I could use my editing skills and some of my scoring and music and organizational skills or producing wise to take everybody's thoughts and ideas and try to make them cohesive and glue them together.
Mm-hmm.
Have a little, something to look back on, but also something that's in real time, because it was the idea of maybe take all this footage and then edit something down the road to look back as a time capsule. But I felt it was important that they come out as often as I could get them out. When I started out, it was going to be weekly, but it's quickly turned into episode 1 and episode 2 instead of weekly one, because it's a lot to take on, more so than I even thought, and learning a lot about that side of things. But yeah, it was. Sorry, Scott, I've lost my train of thought there.
That's okay. That's okay. Let's just take a look at 2 or 3 minutes of episode 1. I'd play it in its entirety, but people can watch it online. It's on Vimeo and it's on YouTube, I believe, as well. But we'll just give people a little bit of a flavor if they haven't seen it of episode 1, and then we'll keep talking about it and watch the others in a bit. Okay.
Sounds good,
so
thanks.
let's take a look.
Project Isolation. Not serious. Very serious. But weird anyway. Right, Selby?
Yeah.
My name is Matthew. This is my son, Selby, right here. Right there. Anyway, we're self-isolating at home. I'm a barber, and I'm not working, so I have no money. I don't want a lot of money. I just need enough money. Like, everybody just needs enough money to get by and, able to do their creative things that make them happy and eat and pay mortgages. What else are we doing? What are we doing at home? It's really super fun.
We are making soap to sell.
We've started a company, Selby and I. It's called SELBY & Co. And we're gonna make soap, and we're gonna sell it. And it's kind of apropos of the times, isn't it? 'Cause you gotta wash your hands, right?
Even cats need some tech time on COVID quarantine. So this is the first week of self-isolation here for COVID-19, and I would say I'm having more good days than bad, but I'm someone who does have a lot of anxiety, and I'm a very empathetic person, and I do a lot of listening for other people. And I find when people reach out to me, I want to be there for them, but it does affect me, and I can feel it today. But even talking about it is kind of alleviating some of that.
So here I am in my self-imposed quarantine, searching for ways to fight boredom and hopefully accomplish something. So what I did was recorded a cover of the Rolling Stones covering Howlin' Wolf. I am the little red rooster, too lazy to crow for days. I am a little red rooster, too lazy to crow for days.
All right, that's just about the first 2 or 3 minutes, about the first third of episode 1. Google that Project Isolation Still Creates, and you'll see it on Vimeo or YouTube. Dustin, was there anything really surprising about the kind of video clips that people were sending you? Was there any particular ones that really popped out, or any themes kind of emerging? Or tell us about your first impressions when people were sending you things.
Yeah, there was a couple things. I did ask for people to be as truthful or, their comfort levels in consideration. Being vulnerable and whatnot, because it's difficult to be in front of camera. I mean, I find this even a bit difficult. I often like to be on the other side. So I empathize with people being, if they were going to be courageous enough to talk about what's really going on with them, emotionally or mentally. I was super touched by people's honesty with that and their willingness to trust me with that information or those sorts of edits. So I was really surprised at people's willingness, maybe, to be so open and honest, which was great. It was exactly what I was hoping for. And I was also surprised at how good people are at videography. Having phones, there were simple instructions, just film 16:9 ratio or landscape, and there was some really, really great work. I mean, some people have some background in it with filming and videography, but there's people that it might have been their first time, and from a vlog point of view or capturing their own B-reel for their own footage, I was really impressed with some of the stuff that I was getting from otherwise amateur filmmakers or videographers.
Yeah, I mean, these phones changed everything, from here to video. Like, it's potentially not good business. So people are inquiring about, they want to get involved with video or whatnot. And sometimes, depending what they want to do, I just say, like, do you have an iPhone? Like, maybe that's the solution, to not overthink it, just to make it happen really quickly. Let's take a look at just a little bit of episode 2 now. We're just going to keep talking about it after we get a little taste of it. This will just be the first 2 or 3 minutes of episode 2. Again, you can see the whole thing online.
As you can see, I can't think of a room that better represents the state my life is in currently.
Hey, I'm Nathan, and taking a little break from my kids. Under quarantine, parenting is something different. But I'm trying to get outside as much as I can, more than I ever have in a while, actually. So it's good. It's really good.
Back in a Nuvik from Whitehorse. Now what are we doing, guys? Building a snow fort. School is closed, daycare is closed. Everybody's out enjoying the -4 weather. It's beautiful. And today we're building a snow fort.
This is what social distancing looks like in the Yukon.
Jen, this is what every day looks like in the Yukon.
I'm at home with my parents, and my mom was a professional musician, so I asked her if she wanted to teach me some piano. So I've been playing the piano with her once a day and just learning some rudimentary pieces. So I'm on level 1 now, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. I believe it's my 14th day of quarantine. So I started acting about a year ago, and I felt like I was just kind of breaking through. I just finished filming my first movie and felt like I was on the right track. But obviously, this pandemic has happened, and I don't have work anymore. My classes have been canceled. My auditions have halted, and it's scary. I think you don't ever want to fall behind, but it's hard to find out what you should be doing when you are in such a collaborative industry. It's this new world that we're going to try to navigate to figure out how to stay sharp with our skills. So I've just been reading as many acting books as I can get, and I've been watching some really, really fantastic movies to just watch other actors, and I'm just trying my best to stay positive. I'm bored.
Okay, that was just a little taste of episode 2 of Dustin Seabrook, who we're talking to today, Project Isolation video series. I mean, he was just talking about working in a collaborative industry, and that's what, the essence of this project is for you. When you're watching this footage, Dustin, like how does it sort of come together in your mind? Like, does it come together in your mind when you're seeing it? Do you start having ideas or sequences, or do you start hearing the music you're going to set to it? You sort of like, how does that work for you in this project, Dustin?
Well, quickly, if I can interject, I think before I trailed off before, the importance of getting these out as I have been while this is going on, is so that people feel a bit more connected to each other, so that we can feel, I'm not the only one that's maybe thinking this way or going through this. So I wanted to get that in there, because I think that's where I was going before I trailed off earlier. As far as process goes and getting these clips, I try to watch them all first to get an idea of a basic, kind of categorize them by subject almost, or even what it does for me on an emotional standpoint, because there are people that may be coping better than others, and, are showing some of the great things that they're making or doing, or maybe that's what they're comfortable with sharing. So I often try to think about a little bit of the flow of things, so that there's a bit of both, but it doesn't jar back and forth either from one feeling or one subject to another. So I'll go through and think about, what may work with each other from different people who've never seen the footage that another person has done, but maybe there's some tying word or some sort of subject that ties the two together. So that's a basis of how I started. And then with music, it's often like most of video projects I do, I'll either walk with it or lay somewhere away from anything that I can touch music-wise, or instruments or production software, and I try to envision it. I try to think about what it feels like to me.
Right, and I mean, obviously, the people who are submitting it have a great amount of trust in you, because you are editing these together, right? So there's sort of sacrificing their control of it to you, but they have a trust that you're going to make something beautiful. I mean, how do you think about the sort of that idea, the ethics of like re-editing people, as you're like the marionette master with the strings, but they're very willing puppets as well. Like, how do you feel about that when you're portraying people?
Well, I'm humbled and that people have been so willing to help with this project and do trust me and my work. I think one of the biggest things, if I work with anybody, is projecting them in the best light. But there is some not fear, but there is some worry about representing somebody the right way, because this is happening so quickly too. There's really not room for feedback, or am I portraying you in a way that you don't want to be portrayed? And so far it's gone really well on that side of things. And I try not to shape it too. I mean, music has such a huge impact on feeling and the vibe of the visuals that you're getting, the whole aesthetic. But I really try to be honest about at least what I'm feeling. It's always hard to know if everybody's going to feel it the same way, but I try not to take it some direction that just doesn't make any sense to me, or something that caters to maybe something I'd want to compose. I really try to give the footage that I get some take that responsibility to make it come through as being genuine with the clips.
Right. Well, I mean, I think people's images are in good hands, because you have this amazing way to sort of make what these stories seem very epic. It's with the music, the way you're editing it together, that it's extremely cinematic. And one thing I've really thought a lot about in the last few years as like sort of a programmer of art exhibitions and events and whatnot is like a big key is to involve people. If people can directly be involved in something, that's so much, instead of just a passive observer. But I mean, also I appreciate the challenges of involving people, because you're also sacrificing a lot of control over what you're doing.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is that you bring that up. With time, and I still like to create my own works where I do have complete control and things of that nature. So that's something I've learned out of this, is letting go of some of that and realizing how time consuming these things can be, because there are lots of great footage, but there's all those little things that people don't really see, the little nuances of ducking audio and fixing audio and color correcting and trying to make the aesthetic all come together when you have all different mediums of capturing devices, from audio and video, that are just being thrown at you in a Google Drive folder or Dropbox, and then you have to somehow make them all work together. And that can be very time consuming. I'm loving it, but I definitely had to step back a bit, just like any of us, and take a little of the pressure off of getting these out so quickly, because it really is a lot.
Well, I sympathize with you on that point, as far as how the show is, where about the same time you started this, I started this show and dove headfirst into the deep end of the pool. Like, this isn't going to stop what I can do for other people and for Ed Video, for whatever. And starting at 5 days a week is great, but it ended up being a little too intense. And so we have one more show tomorrow. And next week we're going to go to 2 days a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. But I think it's wise, because like what you're doing, when you work with other people, you have to try to make sure you're honoring what they do, and not take it too casually or flippantly.
And in the collaborative spirit, I've had Vanessa Tignelli, who's also a producer and editor. She's wanted to do a very similar project in ways, and so we're just decided to work together in that collaborative spirit of what's going on. So she's taken on a lot of the reaching people that I would otherwise not have contact to with her friends list and her groups of people that she's connected to, as well as like collecting that data from them or their videos and editing it down, in a very skillful way, keeping in mind the project that I've already done with like episode 1. She's contributed to episode 2 and now episode 3, and lining up with that aesthetic, which is awesome for the idea of help as well. But there's risk in that too, because I'm taking her footage and she has a vision for it, and then trying to make it fit everything that I've been doing, and gluing it together. So there's a lot of obstacles, but it's been really rewarding.
Well, that's good. And I think my daughter Edie was in that second one, and that was like something really amazing. It was amazing to see it that day. Like, it gives it sort of like solidifies that for the people involved, that they're part of everything, even though they're feeling alone, and they're, you know, they still have a voice, even though they could be alone, through technology, through the internet, through whatever else. So I mean, it's a great project. I'm really delighted that you're able to get a rough version of episode 3 to me just before the show, and that you and Vanessa and all the people in it are allowing us to sort of do a soft premiere of it on Open Circuit today before it goes officially up later tonight. We're going to take a look at this one in its entirety, but do you want to say anything about it before we watch it?
What would I have to say about this one? I mean, all the projects I'm trying to keep a very similar, or each episode I'm trying to keep a similar aesthetic. It is interesting to see how I think people watching the previous ones are kind of getting an idea. You know, the first one, I think people took a huge risk and were vulnerable in that, especially those that were really honest, and I'm so grateful to them. Where the third episode, I think you start seeing a little bit more of the aesthetic coming together more and more, that people are seeing what's already been done, and they're also taking it upon themselves to go in that vein. So I think it's been really cool to see the process, and this is just another step in the everybody learning together in this.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's watch it. It's about 9 minutes long or so. I haven't even had chance to watch it yet, so it's a premiere for me as well. And then when we come back, I do want to talk a bit about your aesthetic, because I've always been really fascinated by it. So if you're just tuning in, we're talking with Dustin Seabrook, Still Creates, about his Project Isolation video series, and we're about to do a worldwide internet premiere of a rough version of episode 3, and it'll be up later tonight.
We are in week 2 of physical distancing, sheltering at home, in Inuvik, Northwest Territories. So Colin and I head back to work at the hospital at the end of the week. The boys are likely going to be heading back to the daycare. They're opening it up for kids of essential workers. And we're feeling very fortunate to have jobs, have our health, have a nice home with a yard to socially isolate in.
This is quarantine at the Phelps household.
So I came back from a hike and I found this beautiful bird, and I thought I just had this sudden admiration for it. And I was like, I have to build this bird a grave. It's like there was this feeling inside me. And so I like buried the bird here and made this beautiful gravestone statue. I think it should show the beauty of this bird on the outside. I am Beatrice Adele McMurtry. I am 7. Yes, I am 7. It is the age of reason.
Isolation day. I'm not sure. My work is in getting people outside and immersed in nature to promote healing and well-being, and it's really easy to just get stuck in this kind of sedentary life, and the more you sit, the more you want to sit. And so I'm really trying to use exercise as a way to keep myself up, I guess. And so tonight I decided, it's so beautiful out, you can see the sun is setting. I decided to try to run up to Signal Hill. I'm really just trying to encourage others to recognize the impacts that not being outside is having on our culture and society in these times, and just to acknowledge how important it is to spend any amount of time outdoors.
One of the saving aspects for me in this weird new reality where it's just Gustav and I all the time is our daily outings, which really kind of adds some semblance of normalcy and structure to life. Within these walks, it's really important to not only kind of be out in nature, but to really get close to nature and be around water to help kind of, I don't know,
clear out some of the emotional chaos that is around us.
A lot hasn't changed for me in the sense of my chronic illness, and really this is one of my most comfortable places. And I've really been thinking a lot lately about how for all those people who are disabled, living in isolation in their homes, that the whole world kind of opened up during these times. There's so many events to attend online, so many things. Can't even keep up. But what's really, really amazing about that is a whole new world opened up for a lot of people who have wanted to be included for a long time. And so as we move through this time and we are able once again to come together, I really hope this work continues, the reaching out far and wide to those of us who can't always attend things. It's brilliant, really.
Hello everyone, this is Ryan Murdoch and Harley the Boston Terrier Davidson in Victoria, British Columbia. We're having a great day. It's sunny again, all the plants are out, everything is green and every other color. So thankful to be in British Columbia, Victoria, Vancouver Island. So thankful I'm spending this time here, these strange times. I'm thankful for this whole experience because it gives me an opportunity to do some things I don't otherwise have time for. Do some art and work on some other parts of my life, make videos. So 88% of the time, I'm just so excited. I'm saying this is amazing, and maybe like 20% of the time, I'm saying, oh my God, this is crazy. What do I do with all this time? On the whole, it's very positive, but I do really have to stay on top of managing my time and my outlook on things. I do have some lonely moments on Friday and Saturday night, kind of feeling alone, missing my friends, wish I were dating. Kind of have a small little world I'm living in here, but for the most part, really enjoying it. Resting my body, doing hobbies, contacting old friends. Hope you all are good wherever you are, whatever you're doing, making the most of the time and finding some long forgotten part of yourself.
So my kitchen is something I've been meaning to work on for quite a while and just haven't had the time to dedicate to it. Having a project to really dive into and something that I can look forward to working on every day when I get up in the morning has been super helpful. Okay, we're done. I screwed all the doors back on, put on some new knobs, and looks like totally new space.
Well, we're going on week 13 of online teaching, and today is the first day we're allowed back in our schools. So I'll be online teaching from work.
Hello, Mr. Morrison.
Hi.
I just sent you the video this morning.
Amazing. For the art unit, was it hard or was it easy?
Pretty hard, but I did it.
Awesome.
What I've done is created a SoundCloud account of me reading children's stories. One of the stories that I'll be recording in the next couple of weeks is this one, The Tree That Grew to the Moon by Eugenie Fernandez. It's an old favorite. Let me take some water. Lena took the tree into the shower to cool it off. The baby tree liked the shower. Then Lena planted the baby tree in a bag of dirt in the middle of her room. Maybe you shouldn't plant it in there, said Mother. Why not? Said Lena. What could happen? I wonder. Tune in to hear the rest. don't know how long we're going to be inside, but in the meantime, this is how we do it. We rise to the challenge.
All right, that was internet premiere of episode 3 of Project Isolation by Dustin Seabrook with his project Still Creates, who we're talking to today. That was beautiful, Dustin. Really, thank you so much to you and Vanessa and all the contributors as well for allowing us to show that here today. I want to talk a little bit about sort of like the what you're doing with this. Like, it's very cinematic, and I think it's a great technique to use because you're combining so many different stories, and some of them are very, positive. Some of them are sort of sad, but they're all very real. I mean, for you, how do you think about that? With what you're doing, like, I guess in particular, I keep thinking, as episode 1 and 2, they're only a few weeks old, but they seem like time capsules of that part of the quarantine isolation aspect. But all of these will be like sort of time capsules in the future. But I mean, how do you think about them as far as like sharing all these different stories?
In the sense of aesthetics, or in the sense of like how I approach each person's story?
Sorry, yeah, that was a confusing question. There's 2 questions in there. Let's talk about how they age. I think as far as like how they age in some ways very quickly, as the dynamic changes for people and what's how people think or what's possible in this world. But how do you think in like a few years from now, when hopefully this is all kind of just a memory, how do you think people will look back on these times?
Well, hopefully with some, having learned something from this, whether about themselves or us together as a whole, as a community. I hope they stand up in visual aesthetics and audio, in the sense of like they're still enjoyable to watch in that sense. And I think it also, as time goes on, and I'm already seeing the shift, there will be the reality of, the very first ones. There's a tone of uncertainty, of maybe even a bit of fear. There's anxiety, and then as it goes on, you're starting to see maybe a bit more, signs of hope and connectiveness and trying to gather together. But you're also seeing a bit of, different mood fluctuations. Like some people are having a harder time and they might be a bit more sad in this period. Maybe the anxiety's lifted a bit, but they're kind of like, I just want this to be over. I want to see my friends and family. I want to see art. I want to explore again. So I think you'll get those periods of, the different types of moods, or like the 5 stages of some sort of loss as time goes on, because then there's going to, we're kind of in the acceptance stage in a lot of ways, because a lot of people are embracing it and trying to make the best of it, or being okay with not doing so much, just living through it. And as the months go on, I'm sure there's going to be more of that. Like, how did things change? And that's the hope of the project, is that we see it even when people go back to work and schools start opening again. Things will be different to some extent. And to be able to document that, like, how did we change from the society that we knew when this all started to months down the road? So when looking back at it in a few years, it'll be really interesting to see from the very beginning of anxiety to the acceptance and kind of down about it, to bringing some of those concepts into our everyday life moving forward.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know for sure, but that's what I predict we might see a bit of.
Yeah, it's hard to prophesize, and it's not very popular, but I think it's human nature right now to try to figure out like what to expect, as anyone would. It's a sort of like a survival technique for any situation. But let's talk about that change, I guess, more particular with you. Like, I'm really curious about like how maybe your thoughts about, we talked a little bit about the frequency of it and whatnot, but I mean, what are you personally learning by embarking on this project about yourself, or about what you're doing with video, or what your abilities are is to put things out in the world? What are your thoughts about those ideas?
Well, myself, I've learned, I mean, this has been an invaluable project for the sense of I've never really taken on working with so many people or trying to organize something of this magnitude. So that's been a huge learning experience, and there's some stress with it. And I think one of the things I'm trying to take from this is, embrace all the things I'm learning, new techniques, new skills, which is my goal in a lot of my projects. Like if I'm learning something, that's amazing for me. That's what I want to be doing. But also learning to give up some of the reins. Like there's something in that, which has both been easy and difficult at the same time. Depends on what part of it is. And I think maybe more solidifying some sort of urge to be more collectively involved, because I'm very independent in the things that I produce. Otherwise, like my own independent art or whatever, as still creates. I do collaborate with people, but not that often. And I've been interested in documentary filmmaking, but I would never pretend to say that I have any sort of experience. I'm learning so much from people in the community, and those that are, like Kimber Sider from Guelph Film Festival has been really insightful and helpful in this. And like I said, Vanessa, people who've done more of the documentary side of things. So it's great learning experience. But I'm also learning a bit on like more of a personal level to be a bit more patient with myself, because there were days where I felt like, as I mentioned before, I'm falling behind on this, and kind of I'm just gonna give up. I'm done. I missed the weekly outing, so it's over. But learning to relax, and that we all might need to do a bit of that. Be a little more patient with ourselves and do what we can do as best as we can, and try to remain some sort of community.
Yes, yeah, I think that's this phase of it. I think for people, in particular maybe creative people, jumped in fast and realizing like, oh, like let's like do this in a sustainable way that makes sense, with quality, not quantity, and all sorts of these ideas. I've been noticing people chattering about in the last week or two, and it's also my dilemma as well about what I'm trying to do and during these times.
And I mean, if I can interject quickly, I don't remember exactly who had said it. It's not my idea, but there was this huge influx of artists and musicians and everybody, and maybe it was like a way of dealing with the initial anxiety for themselves either. But this, there's like almost the first industry to go, in a lot of ways, entertainment or arts and whatnot. And I might be one of the last to come back, but there was sort of this responsibility that a lot of people took on to entertain people during this time, and there's almost an expectation, which I think got a bit dangerous, because the artists and creators are still going through this the same as everybody else, right? And yeah, they're working and whatnot, but there's this sort of, if you're going to keep up with everything else that's going on, you need to get something going online. You need to do a live show. You need to give away your art for free again, in a lot of ways, which is an ongoing issue, and it perpetuated it in a little bit of way. So I thought that was really awesome of somebody to point out. Like we're not solely meant just to entertain all the time and online, and that there shouldn't be an expectation to do so. And it should be, well, it could be more community-based and people supporting each other and lifting each other up.
Yes, well, I mean, what you're doing with this Project Isolation series is exactly that. And I really salute you for taking it on, involving so many people. And, honestly, I know it's really makes people feel less alone, even though it's called Project Isolation, when they see themselves as part of something. I think a big part of it is people have to remind themselves when they're feeling, down about their situation, the things that they're expecting or have been canceled or postponed, is like, it's everyone, everywhere, and people like us are the lucky ones who are not the essential workers out there every day, like without this option to ponder this philosophical idea of their place in the world. So it's okay to, step on the brakes a little bit and reflect and focus on life rather than art for for a little bit. But I mean, out of this, what I ask all the guests as kind of the last question, what, when, again, it's hard to prophesize, but what do you think might come out of this as far as things that we can learn about ourselves, about each other? What are, I guess, sort of like your hopes of, although it's a global trauma, like what maybe are some of the things that might change for the good when we see this through?
That's a big question for me. There are things around social justice that I hope change to some extent, in the way that, in the sense of people getting to, I don't want to necessarily go down the roads of, well, I do, some sort of like basic income, because there's evidence that what people are getting in vulnerable situations is not enough, and the things like CRB, which a lot of people have been fortunate to get and are really grateful for, the money that's being given for that shows that people in more vulnerable situations and social systems are barely getting by and things. So I hope there's a little bit more of a spotlight on that. I also hope that creators and musicians and artists of all types that are doing their best to bring people together and entertain are potentially more compensated a little bit better, maybe, or appreciated in that way, and that money can start flowing into artist pockets instead of medium, the apps that provide some of this stuff, which hasn't been much movement on that, but I always hope for it. And I also hope with that what we take from this is accessibility. One of the contributors in this episode 3 mentioned, some people are isolated even when this is over, or before of this and afterwards. And we're in a time where we can live stream. Somebody can take on that responsibility and include more people on online platforms. Whether we have to build new ones than the ones that are already popular out there, or whatnot. But the idea of us all being able to get together and those people being left out again is a little disheartening to me. So, I mean, that might even be the biggest in a lot of ways, is being more inclusive in the sense of maybe digital parts of the show, so that we do, or art performances or exhibits or galleries or anything, if there's somehow to do more digital versions for people that can't get out.
Yeah, absolutely. And in business as well, like maybe we can all learn, really what the internet is good for, and to bring people together, but also, to conduct communications in new ways that are easier, better for the environment, all these sort of things. Like maybe it's a chance to teach us how to properly communicate to the best that the internet can allow, I suppose, as it's not, not an exact replication of it in real life things, but maybe it's a decent substitute. Well, Dustin, I really, really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us about your ideas around this. I have so many more videos that I could have shown, but I really wanted to focus on your Project Isolation series.
I was talking too much, Scott.
No, we could go on and on and on, but I just really wanted to make the focus on that and all the people who have contributed to it and your ideas around it for this show. So, thank you very much for taking the time and working with me towards this show. And take care of yourself, and you should feel really good about what you're doing as you're putting out something really beautiful into the world, and it's really involving a lot of people in a great way.
Thanks, Scott. That means a lot. I really appreciate it. And thanks to both of you for having me.
Appreciate it. I can't wait for episode 4, and
There will be one.
And keep it up at the pace that's sustainable for you.
Thank you.
All right,
Appreciate
Dustin. Thanks so much. All right, we were just chatting with Dustin Seabrook about all sorts of things, but in particular his Project Isolation video series. So nice to see a sneak peek of episode 3 today with some new faces, familiar faces too, to see what, all these different stories about what people are up to, what they're doing, how they're dealing with everything. Really want to thank all of our our viewers for watching today. 8 people watching. That's fantastic. And you can always see these episodes after on Ed Video Guelph YouTube channel. They're archived forever. I want to thank Edie for her awesome video game review as always. Also to come back tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll be talking with artist Corey Steckel at that time. And that's going to be our last show for about 5 or 6 days. And then next week we'll be back.
2 times a week.
Twice a week, yeah. Tuesdays and Thursdays, same time, 2 p.m. Just trying to, get better at doing the show. Have a little more time to prep work, and I have a few improvements in particular because that video is very gracious and lucky to receive some of our grant money recently from the Canada Council for the Arts, in particular for equipment, so we can upgrade a little bit of our equipment to make it a little easier to do this. So we're always grateful to our funders. Yeah, Canada Council for the Arts, Ontario Arts Council, and the City of Guelph. So Edie, are you ready to play us out? Got a little video in celebration of our grant money. All right, here we go.